I've always had really broad shoulders that I disliked because I'd seen that women ought to have more narrow shoulders because men don't want such strong shoulders in their woman. Men want softness. And then I started calisthenics a while ago, and the broad shoulders expanded even more and became solidly defined. A man told me in the gym one day that I probably work out too much. My shoulders are too jacked. That made me recoil all the more. I could do 12 pull-ups and 30 push-ups. I taught myself the handstands, etc. But I stopped all that. I stopped calisthenics. Why? Because men want women soft. I looked in the mirror and did not like my shoulders. I needed them more feminine and soft and likable by men. And then I subconsciously went on a journey I'll tell you about in this video. And somewhere during that journey, I was at the gym one day and I caught the reflection of my triceps in the mirror to my right. There was another girl whose reflection I could see in the mirror. She had a very soft upper body. I looked at my triceps and my shoulders from that angle and looked at hers. Hers looked very beautiful and soft. Mine looked like something that an insane artist sculpted. The lines and shape of it. I stood up and walked to face that mirror. There was this song playing in my headphones that was like a chant. And as I listened to it and studied myself, for the first time I realized that I looked like I had wings. And it was the most artistic and divine thing I had ever seen on myself. There was a woman who stopped explaining herself. She stopped announcing her next move. She stopped performing her life in real time. And gradually, some even say mysteriously, she disappeared. The woman is me. I am her. I disappeared. Not because I hated people, not because I was broken, not because I gave up, but because somewhere deep inside myself I realized I could no longer hear my own voice through all the noise. The opinions, the expectations, the comparisons, the endless performance of being perceived, the borrowed standards I had set for my life that weren't really mine. And I was exhausted. My soul was tired. Because there is a kind of exhaustion that comes from the rat race, the never-ending race to be something, prove something, have something, and most especially to show something. And eventually I had reached my breaking point. A sacred breaking point in my opinion, where I stopped asking, who wants me? And started asking, do I want me? I started asking, who am I when nobody is watching? Who am I when I'm not filming myself? When I'm not seeking to be validated or chosen or applauded? That is the moment I did disappear and finally began to return to myself. Have you ever felt the urge to disappear, not to escape life, but to finally come home to yourself, to hear yourself clearly? The exhaustion of being perceived. People do not realize how exhausting constant visibility can become, especially for women, because from a very young age, many women are conditioned to experience ourselves through observation. How we look, how we sound, how we are received, how desirable we appear, how acceptable we seem. And we are also conditioned to experience ourselves through the desires of men. We are conditioned to experience ourselves through the desires of men. Am I something a man would want? How about being something you'd want? How about being who you'd choose if you walked into a room? Do you even know what you want? Or is all you know what you've been taught to want? So even in solitude, many women are still performing. still imagining how they are being perceived, still editing themselves, still shaping their personalities around desirability. And after years of this, you can become deeply disconnected from your own natural rhythm, your own natural tone and tune. Because you no longer know, what do I actually like? What do I actually want? What feels true to me when nobody is applauding me for it? That realization is unsettling, but it is also the beginning of your freedom. Sometimes disappearing is not avoidance. Sometimes it is necessary. Sometimes it is recovery. Recovery from noise. Recovery from comparison. Recovery from external influence. Recovery from identities that were built around survival and approval. Why I had to leave. Because if you spend enough years trying to become what the world rewards, eventually you wake up exhausted inside a life that doesn't even feel like yours anymore. And some women realize this before it's too late. They realize, I cannot continue abandoning myself just to remain visible. So they leave. Not always physically, they leave emotionally, spiritually, digitally, psychologically. They withdraw from constant access. They stop oversharing. They stop overperforming. They stop explaining every transformation while it's still happening. And in that silence, something sacred begins. The emergence of her wholeness. It's been ingrained into us our whole lives that we need to be chosen. We need a person, the one, our Prince Charming, to save us, choose us, complete us, validate us. So we walk around knowing that we aren't whole as ourselves, knowing that until and unless we are chosen, something is wrong with us. So our entire decisions, whether we are conscious of them or not, revolve around being chosen, being completed. We spend our entire lives auditioning until one random afternoon something snaps, just like it did for me. The terrifying part of solitude. At first, solitude can be terrifying. Because without distraction, without validation, without noise, you finally meet yourself directly. Your fears, your loneliness, your insecurities, your unmet needs, your unprocessed grief. And many people avoid solitude because silence removes performance. You cannot hide from yourself there. But over time, the silence stops feeling empty and starts feeling honest, comfortable, even entertaining. One of the most beautiful things that happens when a woman disappears long enough is she begins to hear her own rhythm again. The return of her own rhythm. Not society's rhythm, not social media's rhythm, her own. She stops rushing because everyone else is rushing. Stops desiring things simply because they are socially glorified. Stops performing ambition that doesn't even align with her spirit. She becomes quieter, more discerning, more rooted, and for the first time probably in her life begins to feel like it belongs wholly to her. The death of validation addiction. Validation is addictive, especially when your self-worth has been built around external response. Especially in this day and age of social media. Likes, attention, desirability, praise, being chosen, being wanted. At first, disappearing feels like withdrawal because nobody is constantly reflecting you back to yourself anymore. And that can feel disorienting, but eventually, a woman rooted deeply enough in herself discovers something life-changing. She realizes, I do not need to constantly be witnessed to exist meaningfully. That realization is your power. Actual power. So she stops auditioning for love, for acceptance, for approval, for relevance, for desirability. So many women spend years unconsciously asking, what version of me will finally be enough? But I stopped auditioning. I stopped modifying myself to secure emotional approval. I stopped building identity around what would attract people. I started building identity around what felt true and real and honest to me. I started building identity around what was attractive to me. That changed everything. Because once a woman stops needing to be chosen, she becomes impossible to manipulate through rejection. She discovers she was never incomplete. Many people are taught to experience love as completion, as if they are half-formed alone. Are you half-formed alone? As if another human being is supposed to make you feel whole. But I disappeared long enough to discover that I was never incomplete. Lonely sometimes, yes. Human all the time. Desiring connection, certainly. But incomplete? No, never. Love is beautiful, but love is addition, not completion. And that understanding transforms your relationships with other people. Because now I no longer approach love from starvation, from desperation, from emptiness, from emotional dependency, but from wholeness, from choice, from alignment. When you disappear long enough to cause change in yourself and you return, people often say, "You've changed." Of course you've changed. That was the whole point. Because the woman who comes back is no longer fueled by approval. She no longer performs accessibility. She no longer explains every boundary. She no longer shrinks to remain desirable. There's a stillness to her now, a rootedness, a self-trust. She knows now that no matter what happens, no matter who leaves, she can always fall back on herself. I know now that I can always fall back on myself. And the people who only understood the version of me that needed validation cannot fully understand the version of me that found home in myself. One of the most underrated forms of healing is learning how to enjoy your own company profoundly. Not to tolerate it, not to survive it, to enjoy it. To enjoy it. Because when you genuinely enjoy yourself, people start becoming emotional necessities and start becoming decorations. Meaningful decorations, but decorations all the same because you have built the home for yourself, in yourself. So everything and anything and anyone that comes along is a meaningful decoration. This changes your standards, your boundaries, your relationship, your entire emotional life, because now connection is no longer about filling a void. It's about resonance. I became my own home. This is what truly changed. I stopped searching for home inside other people. I stopped expecting relationships to rescue me from myself. I stopped outsourcing belonging. And slowly and carefully, painfully sometimes, but intentionally, I became my own home. A place of safety, a place of grounding, a place of return. And once a woman becomes deeply at home with herself, the world interacts with her differently than before, because she no longer negotiates against her own spirit just to avoid being alone. So I disappeared. Not to punish myself or become mysterious or to prove anything. I disappeared because I could no longer hear myself beneath the noise of expectation. And somewhere in that solitude, away from applause, away from performance, away from constant validation, I met myself honestly for the first time. And once I discovered that I was not incomplete, never half-formed, never waiting for another person to make me enough and whole, I stopped begging life to choose me, and I started choosing myself every day. Do you feel like you spent your entire life auditioning? What does being at home within yourself mean to you personally? It's been my pleasure as always to sit with you. This has been the Human Mirror. Look closely, you were never invisible. I'll see you in the next reflection.